Hello, viewers.
Oh,
All right, how's it going, everybody? This is. All right, hold on a second. Let me just move to the comments so that I can see what folks are saying. Anyways, hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again because it's time to talk about Simon and Garfunkel. All right, so today we're going to be ranking Simon and Garfunkel's 5 studio albums. Hey, Garage Geek, how's it going? And those 5 albums are. I was pressured to chat. Anyways, Wednesday morning, 3 a.m., Sounds of Silence, Parsley, Sage, Rosemary and Thyme, Bookends, and Bridge Over Troubled Water. So, short discography, but after last week's Beach Boys video, we needed to tackle a much shorter discography. So, we also have Jason the Old Millennial with us today. How's it going, man?
Thanks for having me.
So, any just general thoughts about Simon and Garfunkel as an artist just before we get into this video?
yep. We were kind of discussing before we started. We went live. We were just discussing how they pretty much never really made a bad album. Like they had some pretty good start, but then each one they're starting incorporating other stuff, and they started to really improve. And yeah, those 5 those 5 albums are definitely has some very incredible stuff on them. So it was definitely good to re-listen to this catalog again.
Me. I absolutely love Simon and Garfunkel. I got into them around the same time I got into the Beatles, which was around like 9th and 10th grade. Just amazing sound they had. My second album I ever bought. First one being the Mamas and the Hot Papas, but the second one I ever bought was Wednesday morning, 3 a.m. I want to show it to you guys right now, but I don't have it. The one I do have is like another copy I bought because the album cover looks a little better. But that's how I was introduced to them. Then I was introduced to some of their more hits like Mrs. Robinson, Cecilia, Then I got into their last album, funny enough, first and the last. And then I listened to Bookends. Like, it's cool how they went from like being like just like a duo to being like these giants with one of the biggest with the Wrecking Crew. That's how I feel.
Yeah, Simon Garfunkel is one of my favorite groups of all time. Best duo ever, I believe. It's hard to beat. And yeah, I'm always surprised that they only made 5 albums. And because they have so many hits on the radio growing up. Yeah, when I was listening to oldies, I mean, there's so many Simon Garfunkel songs. So they really packed in quite a bit in 5 albums, I feel like. Hit songs and so forth, So I don't know how many more bands or groups have done it like they have. And maybe they could have
gone Graduate, I think.
They didn't get along.
Weren't they on the Graduate?
Yeah.
The Graduate soundtrack?
Yes.
Yeah.
We're not going to count that as a studio album, but I just wanted to make sure.
No, that's a soundtrack.
Yeah.
All right, without further ado, let's go ahead and get on with it. We're going to go in the order of Briar, Nick, Jason, and then myself.
All right. Okay, so getting us started, this probably won't be a surprise to many, but yeah, for my number 5, I am going to go with the debut. And again, it's still very good. Obviously, they would do a lot better moving forward, but I still think there's some good stuff on here. I would say this is probably their only really true folk album, because moving on, they would incorporate other stuff into the music, but this is just them, mainly acoustic guitar, and it's just their harmonies. And early on, their harmonies was definitely right there. It's definitely very noticeable. But yeah, so this is pretty much the only, to some normal people, the only notable thing about the album is that it is the home of the original Sounds of Silence. I'm not sure where you three kind of would put it, but for me personally, I think I actually prefer this version rather than the more famous electric version, because to me, I think it kind of fits the lyrics a lot better, because here it's just acoustic guitar. It kind of fits the more haunting kind of more melancholic tone of the lyrics, but I still really enjoy the electric version. But yeah, it's mainly covers. Like there's 12 songs and 8 of them are covers, and I believe of the original songs, I think one of them Paul doesn't even credit himself. He like went under like a pseudonym, I think, if I remember correctly. But yeah, it's still, again, that's the only downside, is that it's mainly covers, but the covers are pretty good, and the originals are also not bad. Definitely, probably the big highlight is, of course, Sounds of Silence. But I'd also want to shout out the song "He Was My Brother," which was dedicated to one of their friends who was also a civil rights activist, but he was killed. He was killed by lots by the racist people, a lot of the racist people at the time. So that was kind of a nice song. They did a little song pay tribute to him. But yeah, it's pretty good. But we all know what they would go on after that. But that's my number 5.
If you want to hear a really good version of "He Was My Brother," listen to the Paul Simon version from his debut album, Paul Simon's Songbook. You could absolutely hear his like when he does it with Art Garfunkel, he like you could hear his emotions, but like when he does it by himself, you really hear his hurt, and he says, I think he says, "Oh God," or "Oh damn," he really like felt emotional singing that version. But I recommend you listen to it. It's really nice. My number 5 is going to be "The Sounds of Silence." Garrett, you're wrong. It's not Bookends. That's a great. Well, they're all really good, but it's not Bookends. This version has my least favorite version of "The Sounds of Silence." I way prefer the acoustic version. Bryce said it perfectly. It just matches the vocals, lyrics. It's more haunting in a way because of the sounds of silence. This version's good too. This version was they didn't even know this version was made because they were broken up at the time. This whole album was because they got popular from that song. That's why they even named it "The Sounds of Silence." This is the first album to incorporate the Wrecking Crew. I don't think them and the Wrecking Crew really sound all that well together yet. Like they're starting to get used to them. Obviously the Wrecking Crew is a great group of people. Same Simon Garfunkel, but you could tell they're just starting to work together, and doesn't sound as right. Leaves That Are Green. I prefer the Paul Simon version that he recorded on his debut album. Blessed, I really enjoy. One of those songs that gets stuck in your head. Kathy's song, that's another song I way prefer Paul Simon's version. This version's good, but I prefer Paul Simon's version. I think I feel like they took his version. I don't know, it felt like Paul Simon just redid the one that he did on his first album because it's just him singing on this. Somewhere They Can't Find Me. I think it's really catchy. I really like it. Angie, it's all right. It's basically the instrumental version of the last song. I find that to be pretty lazy. Like the first, and there's one with words and then one without. You flip over to side 2, you get Richard Corey. I really enjoy this song. Really dark lyrics. Put a bullet in his head. Wow, that's pretty dark. A Most Peculiar Man. It's kind of similar, like someone who's alone and they end up ending themselves, which is sad. These 2 songs in particular are so dark for Simon and Garfunkel at the time. Like Brian said, the last album is just mostly folk stuff, and then you got these 2 tracks coming along. Is wow, so dark. April Come She Will. Again, I prefer the Paul Simon version of this song. I don't know. It's just I wish he would have came up with more stuff instead of reusing his debut stuff with Garfunkel. We've got a groovy thing going. It's an okay track. This and like I said, Angie, those are the only 2 okay tracks. I Am a Rock, I enjoy, but again, I prefer Paul Simon's version. And if you actually want to hear a band covering this, listen to the Hollies version. Even supposedly Paul Simon liked it a lot too, so check that out. But yeah, that's number 5.
Just a random thought. Does it feel like their covers aren't very creative?
It depends on the one, because Scarborough Fair is very creative, but then If you like some of the early stuff, not so much.
That's just random thought. I was looking at your guys' covers and I was like, I don't know, just the picture of them two doing something, and I'm like, they didn't put much effort. It felt like.
Well, yeah, they're just looking back. They're just
Oh,
like,
the
Yeah, they're
album
just
covers.
posing. Yeah, they're just
I
posing.
thought you were
There's-
talking about like covering songs, but yeah, it's
Oh,
mostly it's just them walking around somewhere.
Yeah, just standing, just posing.
yeah, I don't know. That's just a random thought, but uh, I'm with Breyer. I agree. Number 5, Wednesday morning, 3 a.m. Is my 5th spot. Like what I like the album because they still sound good. Like they still have a great sound. But yeah, like Breyer said, it just didn't feel very original. And Paul Simon is like one of the greatest songwriters, I think. And like, how do you not, maximize, his songwriting ability? Obviously, he wrote "Sound of Silence" at a pretty young age, and that's just amazing lyrical song. I don't even know what that song's about, but I love the lyrics still. Like, "Hello, Darkness, my old friend." That's like a great lyric. I don't know why, but I was like, I love that lyric and how it starts that. I mean, once he starts that, "Hello, Darkness, my old friend," you're like, oh, I love it. I'm already in love with the song, and and like I think there's something like a cancer, darkness like a cancer grows, I think, or something like that.
Yeah.
Love that lyric. I don't know. So yeah, it's like, man, what makes Simon Garfunkel so great is partly is Paul Simon's songwriting. And I don't know if it's because they just rushed this album and they just kind of like, hey, let's just throw some songs in there just to finish the album. Because I was kind of weirded out by like seeing like "Go Tell It on the Mountain," which is just a hymn gospel song that I sang at church since I was a kid. So it seemed like an unusual song to just throw in there to me, though it's not bad. They have a good version of that song, but it's not the usual kind of song you would think you just throw on a pop or a folk album to me. Unless I might be wrong. Maybe folk music does that all the time, and I just don't think about it. And it feels like there's another hymn gospel song in there too that I'm not remembering, but I do remember "Go Tell on the Mountain." I think there's another song that I'm like, this sounds like they're just singing in church, which sounds good, but it's just it lacks their originality, which is what makes them so great in the later albums. And just the way they sing together good, but yet doesn't feel like they really maximize how great they can harmonize together and how they can sing different parts at the same time, like they do in some other songs. So it's a nice album, but yeah, it definitely doesn't quite have their signature sound yet, I feel like. Like I said, "Sound of Silence," obviously, it's one of my favorite songs. Though I'll say I like the electric version better, just because that's what I grew up listening to.
Yeah.
So when I hear the acoustic version, I feel like I'm missing something. I'm like, in my brain, I'm thinking, shouldn't there be something else here? Like, I don't know. So, but this is also a good version of the song and sounds great. The other notable song to me is "Wednesday Morning, 3 a.m." I quite like that song as well, the title track of it. Anyways, but yeah, good, album, but definitely have a lot to grow, I think, as a group.
All right, my turn. First, I want to shout out Adam from What the Gym. Put his ranking of the Simon and Garfunkel albums. He says Wednesday morning, 3 a.m. is his least favorite, and the albums just keep getting better up till Bridge over Troubled Water.
Yeah.
So thank you, Adam, for putting your ranking in there. For me, sorry for anybody who likes this album, but I'm also going number 5, Wednesday morning, 3 a.m. Some of these songs, like Jason said, just sound like gospel cover songs. The first one, "You Can Tell the World," was one of them, and they had "Go Tell It on the Mountain" as well. But then you got some other really good stuff in here. I know "Benedictus" is probably just like a cover of an old song used in Catholic Mass, probably. But "He Was My Brother" is really good. I really liked their cover of Bob Dylan's "The Times They Are Changing," though. That one's pretty good.
Yeah.
Wednesday morning, 3 a.m., the title track is great. And my thoughts on this version of "The Sound of Silence," it feels like something's missing. And I feel like the extra instrumentation kind of adds to the urgency of the message of the song. And somebody put it really well one time. that Simon and Garfunkel's Sound of Silence is a warning. And if you don't heed that warning, then you get Disturbed's Sounds of Silence. But I like the electric version better. Number 5, Wednesday morning, 3 a.m.
So the group is split on it.
Yeah.
The thing about the acoustic version is just I don't know, like the electric version. I feel like it's too much. I feel like it's overly dramatic, and I think it like I'm so like it's kind of like you guys are familiar with the electric version. When you hear the acoustic version, you feel like it's missing. I feel like when I hear the electric version, I'm like, this is too much. I feel like I feel like the message is enough with just the acoustic version. I feel like just adding all that instrumentation is just overkill.
Well, as soon as it started, I'm like, oh, this is really nice. It feels just more intimate. But then, like, as it started going on later in the song, it's like, it feels like this needs to be building to something, and it's not. Anyway, just my
Has
2 cents worth of it.
Paul Simon ever said anything about it, or?
I know Paul Simon back in the day said that he didn't like that they added that because they did it without
wondering.
asking them.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah. And I did a poll, like literally before I came here, before we actually started doing this. Like I did a poll on my community post, and I asked like which one do you like better, and the acoustic or the electric, and so far the electric's winning. So
70%.
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. But again, it is the most famous version. Of course, that's the one that's played in The Graduate, which is so yeah, I'm not that surprised by that.
Me and Brian are the minorities.
I guess.
pretty much.
Uh-oh.
All right.
At least he didn't put Sergeant Pepper at number 8.
Anyhow. All right. So we're moving on to my number 4. And yep, number 4, one with the Sounds of Silence. After I think Nick already pretty much summed up the history of this album. This was after the first album tanked, they kind of split up. Paul went to England, recorded his first studio album. And then the producer on the first album made the electric version, and that version became very popular, and so that was pretty much enough for the two of them to get back together, record this album, and it's really quickly done. They didn't really have that much time to really work on it, which kind of adds to why the album has kind of a rushed feel to it, because they didn't have that much time. And like Nick mentioned, a lot of these songs were from Paul's first album, and they're just re-recorded with Art Garfunkel just adding his harmony into it. I have not heard Paul's album, so I don't really have that comparison like Nick has, but from what I've heard from this, I enjoy it. Definitely a huge improvement on the first album. There's a lot more to it. There's a lot more instruments on here. We already talked about the electric one quite a bit, but other pretty notable songs like Leaves That Are Green, that's one that was from Paul's solo album, and I enjoy this one. I really like the harpsichord played on this one. I really like that. Somewhere where they can't find me. Again, they're starting adding some horn section into it, which I've always enjoyed. I always like a good horn section. Most Peculiar Man has a pretty guitar line I also would like. We got Groovy Thing Going, good, and I'm a Rock, which is another pretty good standout song, kind of talking about dealing with isolation and detachment, which that's another thing I always liked about Paul Simon. He'll write something that it's very poetic, but it's very relatable. That's really what made people gravitate towards them. Like, he's writing about these feelings that a lot of people back then and even now still feel that way. But yeah, there's still I think there's still some covers on here that are also not pretty good, but yeah, definitely a big step in the right direction. So number 4 is Sounds of Silence.
It's pretty good.
4. Oh, continue.
Oh, I just said it's pretty good.
Oh. Yeah. My number 4 is going to be Parsley Stage Rosemary Time. Much big improvement from the second album. Definitely feels less rushed than the second album. Scarborough Fair, love that song. Patterns, which that's another song from Paul Simon's debut album. I could take either one. Both are pretty good. I wouldn't choose either. Like, both are pretty good. Homeward Bound, really great song. Cloudy, it's a pretty good song. Big Bright Green Pleasure Machine, that's really good. The 59th Street Bridge song, Feeling Groovy. I love that song.
Yeah.
The Dangling Conversation, really good. Flowers Never Bend with the Rainfall. I like that one a lot. A simple desultory prolific, or How I Was Robert McNury's Into Submission. I love that one. Very Bob Dylan esque. Uh, Paul Simon's version off his debut album. The both are like drastically different. Like this has like an electric sound to it with the electric guitar. The other one's like acoustic guitar. I prefer the acoustic guitar because he really strums on that. It's like it reminds me of something like Johnny Cash would do. But yeah, for Emily, whenever I may find her, I really like that one. A poem on the ground on the underground wall. Really enjoyed that one as well. And then 7 o'clock news / Silent Night. Really great album. I just slightly prefer this one over the Sounds of Silence. That's all I got to add to it.
All right.
All right. My number 4, I think, is probably a hot take. Maybe. I feel like this album is probably everybody's top 2, and I still like the album, but I like the other ones a little bit more. And so number 4, I have Bookends, and I don't know if that's a big surprise.
I'm glad you have a hot take because I thought all three of you guys were going to be like Wednesday Morning, Sounds of Silence, Rosemary, Bookends, and then Bridge Over.
Somebody's got to have a hot take in each of these episodes. Otherwise, like, why would you watch this?
Yeah.
It's boring.
Yeah, and Bookends is their 4th album. So, I mean, yeah, obviously they're really perfecting their sound. Obviously, I think they probably did it before with, Parsley, Sage, Rosemary, Thyme, but and then the 5th album, of course. And then, I like this album, but there's some kind of weirdness about it to me. Like, there's this one track that says, like, old people talking.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's old people talking, and I don't know what I don't pay attention.
I will explain why that's there whenever I get to Bookends, because there's a reason.
When I get there, I usually just skip it because I'm like, "This, am I right?" I have to look at it and go, "Did I skip to another album? Like, is this Simon Garfunkel?" Like, I'm so confused, and I don't know. It's weird, and I don't know if it's experimental. Yeah, you'll get to it, but I don't get that. That kind of throws me off when I get to that. But the 2 big ones are America. Absolutely love that song. One of the great Simon Garfunkel songs. Very interesting lyrics. I don't quite understand what's going on in it, but it's almost like
it relates more to the voices of old people than you think it would.
Okay.
Which I will get to whenever I get to Bookends.
But it's interesting. Like this is kind of talking about like a trip to America, maybe, or something, and they're talking about like they're saying things like my briefcase or something is a camera or something. I can't remember now, but so is a spy.
Look out, his bow tie is really a camera.
Yeah, bow tie is really a camera. So it's like they're just like, playing or something. I don't know, just making things up. It's very interesting lyrically, but just so great. The harmonies and the acoustic guitar playing. I mean, Paul Simon is one of the greatest acoustic guitar players as well. One of my favorites out there. And obviously songwriting is so good, and then their voices mesh so well together. The other big one to me is Mrs. Robinson, which is, to me, maybe the most well-known Simon Garfunkel song. I feel like if you know anything about Simon Garfunkel, you probably know Mrs. Robinson and probably Sound of Silence. I feel like those are like the 2 most played songs on the radio, on the oldie station for me growing up. Those are probably 2 I heard first, from Simon Garfunkel. And of course, Mrs. Robinson was like big on the Graduate soundtrack and the movie. They play that song, of course, and man, it's such a fun song. The do just them just doing that is like so great. I'm like, I love it. And the acoustic guitar playing again is just so amazing in that. And it's such a catchy song, like one of the most catchy songs that they have. Love that. To me, those are like really the only 2 really big ones on this album. I really kind of liked Old Friends. I thought that's one I'm not familiar with, and I was listening to it going, I kind of like the song. I don't know it really. I came across that. I was like, I kind of like this song. And then At the Zoo, I kind of liked when I heard that one. I was like, it's another one. I was like, hidden gem kind of song where I like never heard of it before really, and that was pretty good. And yeah, overall, good album, but I like the other three just a little bit more. So that's my number 4, Bookends.
You're sleeping on Hazy Shade of Winter.
Yeah, I know. I was gonna mention that. I love that song.
Yeah, that's a good song too. Yeah, Hazy Shade of Winter. Is that a cover song? Am I crazy or?
I think it's a
No, they wrote it, but it was
Oh, they
covered in
wrote
the 80s. It was covered in the 80s by a different band.
I feel like I heard somebody else sing it. Yeah,
The Bangles.
the Bengals. Okay,
Yeah.
so maybe I heard that version more than
It was featured in Stranger Things in one of the episodes.
Was
the
it?
Bengals version.
Yeah.
All right, my turn. These next 4 albums are all absolutely incredible, but they must be ranked.
Yeah.
Yep.
My number 4 is this one right here, Sounds of Silence, their second album. Even though it's ranked second from the bottom, I still love this album. Very dark for a Simon and Garfunkel album. Some of the themes on this album are really kind of dark, but it works with their folk style. Starting out with The Sound of Silence, really good lyrics on this song, and as we discussed earlier, I like the added instrumentation on this version. Paul Simon just kind of coming into his own as a songwriter in early age. That one's great. Hold on a second. Ever feel like you need to sneeze and then you don't?
Oh, yeah, I hate that.
That's what happened. Anyway, Leaves That Are Green, amazing. I like the harpsichord on that. I don't really like Blessed very much. I mean, I like the beat and the guitar, but I don't know. I just don't like the song as much. Kathy's song is great. Somewhere They Can't Find Me is great. And then they kind of use that riff at the beginning on Angie, which I think Angie is a cover song. So I think that that song actually came first, the instrumental song, and then they kind of wrote Somewhere They Can't Find Me off of that riff. But correct me if I'm wrong. Then we get side 2, and that's kind of where the really dark stuff comes in. Richard Corey talking about how the grass isn't quite always greener on the other side. This man is like, I work for Richard Corey, he's my boss, and it always seems like he's living the high life and I want to be him. But then you realize at the end that Richard Corey isn't so happy himself, ends up offing himself at the end. And that theme kind of continues on A Most Peculiar Man. That the guy is not very happy either and like turns the gas on and like gasses himself. And so that's very interesting on this album here. We also got April Come She Will. That one's really great. Really great lyrics there. That one's more up. We got A Groovy Thing Going. Another really great song. I like Art Garfunkel's harmonies on this one, especially. You must be out of your mind. And then the ending track, absolutely amazing. I Am a Rock, so good. Talking about isolation, most people say like it's better to have loved and lost than to never have loved at all. But then Paul Simon throws in this line, "If I never loved, I never would have cried," and it's like giving you a different perspective on that.
Yeah.
I will note this Simon and Garfunkel, this copy here, it's an old mono copy of Sound of Silence, and it's really scratched up. It sounds somewhat different than the stereo version, but mostly the same. The biggest difference is probably the title track has a lot more reverb on it, and I like it like that. But if you can take having a lot of scratches on the record, because this album is beat up.
Yep.
Yeah, if you guys can, you should listen to the Paul Simon version of "I Am a Rock." You could. The best thing about that is like he's alone when he sings it, so it's like really encapsulates the message. Because when he sings it, with Garfunkel, I don't know, I'm saying his name wrong all the time. The message is through, but like when he sings it alone on his first album, it's like, which is the original version, you could really hear like how he feels and all that stuff.
Anyway, that's my number 4, Sounds of Silence. Still a really great album, but the other 3 are better.
Yeah. All right. So I actually made a change while we were talking because for me, my third and second always flip-flop. It depends what kind of mood I'm in, because they're both pretty good. But like I said, it comes down to what I'm feeling. So for number 3, I'm going to go with Bookends for my number 3. And
Really?
yeah, it's a really good album. Yeah. And I totally understand why this one is often ranked either second or first. But yeah, there's some terrific songs on here, like of course America, Old Friends. I also really like Faking It. Of course, for that song that was about Paul. That by this point, both of them were starting to get more famous, and Paul was kind of going through imposter syndrome, so he was kind of pretty uneasy during that time. But yeah, very good song. Of course, Mrs. Robinson. Of course, you can't really ignore that one. Hazy Shade of Winters. I really like this version here. I'm definitely more familiar with the Bangles version because that was the first time hearing it. But yeah, they did a good. But hearing the original is also really good. Still has a very upbeat, definitely have a more rocking mood to it, which I enjoy. Then you have At the Zoo, which is another great song. But yeah, they're definitely dealing with a lot of different themes here. They're dealing with youth, disillusionment, relationships, and I know Garrett's going to go more in depth on the overall theme of it. I'll save it for him because he can probably put in way better words than I can. But basically side 1 is kind of like a concept about going from childhood to growing up to your old age. Again, that's kind of the simplified version, but that's kind of why there's that whole audio collage of old people talking, because it kind of fits that concept, which is cool. But on its own, then yeah, I don't really need to hear it on its own. But yeah, I get it. But yeah, and last thing I'll kind of add, but Save the Life of My Child, like the intro to that always kind of scares me because it kind of has that synthesizer. Then you hear that massive crash, and I'm like, that always like wakes me up because like.
And who starts an album with "Don't Jump"? Like that's kind of creepy.
Exactly. So that's always like, whoa. So, but yeah, it's a great album. But yeah, for right now it's number 3. But sometimes it can be, but sometimes it can be my second. But for now, it's number 3. So yeah, there we go.
Speaking of number 3 being Bookends, it's also my number 3.
Bookends.
So, the Bookends theme opens it up really nice. That goes into you're like, oh, it's gonna be a nice album, but then Save the Life of My Child comes on, and I'm like, this their only really psychedelic song they ever did, and I really enjoy it. One of their best songs they ever did, and then it goes into America. It's such a great, nice song. Overs is a really great track as well. I know Breyer just I was gonna say, but he said the concept about what the side 1's gonna be, what side 1's about, but Voices of Old People, it doesn't do it for me. It's not my
Yeah.
I promise if this wasn't on the album, I probably would have ranked it. I probably would have, like everyone says, 2 or 1, but kind of destroys it for me.
Okay.
Old Friends is really great, and then it ends off on the Bookends theme again, which is great. I feel like this should have been more of like a side 2 kind of thing, not a side 1. Kind of like kind of like Abbey Road, like side 1, and then side 2 has like that that collage. I feel like it should have been like this too, where side 1 should have been like all the singles and all of them, like side 2, it's like the theme and all that. But anyway, side 2 opens up with one of my top 10 favorite Simon & Garfunkel songs, "Faking It." I absolutely love that song. Punky's Dilemma. My least favorite out of the 5 songs. Mrs. Robinson, very iconic. Hazy Shade of Winter, the best version. I see why Breyer says it's good. It's his best because that's a really good rendition, but the original. And then Not the Zoo. It just Hazy Shade of Winter just kind of abruptly stops, and then Not the Zoo comes on, and it's just like it's the album starts nice and it ends really nice. It just, for me, the other 2 are just better.
You know what, Nick? I'm gonna play this album later tonight, and I'm gonna play it backwards, side 2 and then side 1, and see how that works.
Yeah, tell me later how that works, because I feel like it would have been better if side 1 would have happened with all like the commercial, like the singles and all that, then like side 2.
Yeah, because hot take, I've never thought that At the Zoo was a good album closer. Like, it's a really great song, but like when I
Yeah.
first listened to the album, I was like, wait, where's the next song? That was the end.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think that's what would be
You know, like
better.
bookends and starts side two, and then bookends and side
Yeah,
two.
having
And
the bookends
just
theme
had like
as the
that
last
feeling.
song.
Like, wow, what a
Yeah.
great closure. But
Better
like, yeah, you're right.
conclusion.
At the zoo, you just expect more afterwards.
Yeah, I was going to ask, where's the bookends and bookends reprise? Where's that on the album?
First and last song on side one.
Okay, so they just
Which,
ended with side one that way.
yeah, which I'll get in more to that when I get to bookends. Oh,
Yeah.
hey, Mickey. Let's see.
Hey,
Mickey says he's so old that The Sound of Silence was the number one song when he was born.
nice.
Cool.
All right, so
It's
Jason,
funny
you're
because I listen to a lot of these albums on Spotify, so I don't get the whole side one, side two part of it.
Neither do I, so I have to look it up.
Yeah, until I'm listening to like the record, and I have to actually pick up the record and like
Mhm.
flip it over and put it on, and then I
Yeah.
kind of get that idea of like, oh, cool. Like it's kind of cool when you end one side and then you start the other side, and you're like,
basically side one is a concept, and side two is just a bunch of singles and songs written for the graduate.
Mhm.
okay, yeah, okay, that makes sense. But yeah, you really get the feeling of like, oh, that's a cool ender to that side, and then this is a cool beginner to this side. So that definitely kind of makes you kind of look at the album a little bit differently, I would say, right?
It reminds me of
Yeah.
Magical Mystery Tour by the Beatles. Like how
Yeah.
like the first, well, it wasn't a concept, but like the first side was like something, and then like the second side was like all singles and all that.
Yeah. Exactly.
Mm.
Exactly how that worked. But yeah. Number 3 for me is The Sounds of Silence, which I think I have it higher than everybody else here. I think everybody already talked about it.
Yeah, I put it at number 5.
You guys were like 5 and 4, I think, on
Yeah.
it.
Great album, but there's
So-
three better ones.
So I put it just a little bit higher than everybody else, number 3. But yeah, really great album. I think definitely, like you said, a step up, I thought, from Wednesday Morning 3 a.m., in my opinion. It just felt more original. They got some more of Paul Simon's originality in there, which I think really helps. And I think they definitely were getting better as a duo. And you start with The Sound of Silence, which is maybe my favorite Simon and Garfunkel song. Like, it's between that and maybe The Boxer is like my favorite. And so, like, when you start with that song, I'm just like, oh, I just love that song so much. And so a great way to open that album, of course. And I'm a Rock is the other, like, to me, the other really big hit off of here. Really interesting, I think, lyrically. And I'm trying to remember the lyrics. I don't have in front of me, but there's something about like a rock never something and an island never cries, I think is the line.
Rock
Right.
feels no pain.
A rock feels no pain, an island never cries. I don't know. I do love that. And then the little guitar dun 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 dun, dun, dun. Like, I just love how the guitar playing plays into that. And yeah, absolutely, yeah, one of their greats. I really love Kathy's song. That's one that I don't remember being a hit or anything, but it should have been because it's so good. Like,
Yeah,
I'm
that's
like,
a good one.
like a bigger hit. And so somebody can correct me if I'm wrong of saying this, that Simon Garfunkel did Wednesday Morning 3 a.m. Then they basically like broke up.
Mhm.
And Paul Simon, I think, went to England for, I don't know, for a year or something. I don't know. And like was playing in the clubs there.
Yeah,
And
it's true. He made an album, Paul Simon Songbook.
Yeah.
And it's funny you say originality on Sound Sides. Yes, he wrote it, but like he reused so much from
Right.
his first album on there. I'm like, that's not original. That's just him being lazy and just adding Garfunkel to the mix to it.
But again, they didn't have that much time, so
That
they had
album
to just
wasn't
get
released
some.
in America, though. I don't think so.
I guess not hearing the Paul Simon version. I guess to me it was just the original. And I'm guessing he probably just honed his skills there in England, probably playing around with other people and doing a lot of songwriting. And I think he had a girlfriend named Kathy. Is that right? Does anybody?
Yes,
I
and
don't
that's
know,
also
guys.
why the girl in America's name is Kathy.
Yeah, America. He mentions Kathy again. That's right. So I think that's where Kathy's song comes from. I think he had a girlfriend, like a serious girlfriend. I don't think he ever married her, though. I'm not sure about that. I might be wrong. I read his biography a while ago, but
I'm not sure. Like, he had a wife by the time, because he wrote Bridge Over Troubled Water for his first wife, but I'm not sure if that was Kathy or not.
Yeah, I can't remember, but anyway, so that's kind of interesting. Kathy's song, and that's the kind of connection there, I think, with this time with something I didn't know until I read his biography on him, and that was really fascinating because I didn't know any of that kind of stuff. Which, it's like, is there? I mean, can you imagine a world where they don't get back together? Like, I just can't
Yeah.
think of that.
That's like little sneak peek for next week. We're doing the Billy Joel albums. Billy Joel tried to commit suicide right before he
Hmm.
released his first record, and if that
What?
would have happened, can you imagine if they would have succeeded with that?
Yeah. It's
No,
crazy.
Crazy.
that's terrible. But yeah, so yeah, Kathy's song, just absolutely beautiful acoustic guitar song, of course. I can see that as just a Paul Simon. That just sounds like, yeah, a Paul Simon type song. I can see that. And then April Come She Will. I really like that song. That's a really good song off of here. That's not a big hit, but anyways, yeah, just yeah, really great album. Sounds of Silence.
Another scenario I like to think is what if John Entwistle and Keith Moon left because the Beach Boys, John like Bruce Johnson and I think Dennis Wilson went over to England to like
Yeah,
introduce everyone to Pet Sounds, and Keith Moon and John Entwistle are two of them, and Pete Sounds was like, we have a concert today, you gotta be on time, and they were listening to Pet Sounds and they're like, oh crud, we're late for the concert, and they went there and they were starting to play without them, and they were this close to like quitting the band because of that. It was like, oh, you went on without it, and then like, Pete Sounds like, well, how are we supposed to play with like you're coming late all the time, and yeah, that one incident with Pet Sounds, with them listening to Pet Sounds for the first time, and with Keith Moon and all that, like
but in the end of the Who.
no, but they recorded a song together in the city. John Entwistle and Keith Moon, they recorded a song together, so they thought like, hey, we can make it. What if we like quit the band and like become a duo or whatever?
Yeah.
Yeah, that could have happened. Imagine that would have happened.
Interesting.
Imagine Who's Next and Tommy and Quadrophenia without them, and the Who sellout.
Yeah. Those
No.
are some ones, yeah.
That's
Would've
like
been-
their best stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's see. Who are we on? Is it my turn?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Jason
you're
just talked about Sound of Silence. Okay. I do not have my number 3 album, surprisingly. And I'm going to fix that pretty soon. I need to buy this album whenever I get more money. But number 3, Parsley, Sage, Rosemary, and Thyme. Absolutely wonderful record. Starting off with Scarborough Fair, just a really beautiful kind of Renaissance song. Then we get to this. There's a dog. Hold on a second. Okay, the dog stopped barking. So then we get to Patterns, which kind of has this frantic sound to it. And I really like the line. I forget exactly what it was, but the line about like being like a rat in a maze. That's really cool. Cloudy is absolutely amazing. I really like Cloudy. One time I listened to it like right after it had rained, and that was really just really nice to listen to that right after the rain.
Yeah.
Homeward Bound, one of their best songs.
Yeah.
The Big Bright Green Pleasure Machine. Kind of talking about consumerism and how you can market anything, but it's also about weed. Yeah. But then we get to the 59th Street Bridge song, parenthesis, Feeling Groovy, another one of the best songs on this album. Groovy is the perfect way to describe this song. It's just Paul, Art, and Paul's guitar, and it's just an amazing song. The Dangling Conversation is another really good one. Flowers Never Been with the Rain. I'm not going to try to pronounce this song, but the one that sounds like Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
He's just going through and kind of name checking a bunch of stuff and doing a Bob Dylan. He even mentions Bob Dylan in the song.
Yep.
You think he's talking about Bob Dylan, but he's thinking about Dylan Thomas. Whoever
Yeah.
he is.
Yeah.
Man has no culture.
And then one of the things that I really like about this album is the way the album closes. Like the first time I heard that, I was like, whoa. And that's Silent Night / 12 O'Clock News. And for those who've never listened to this album or never listened to this song before, it starts off with Simon and Garfunkel singing Silent Night with just them and the piano. But then you start hearing something really quietly in the background. It's like, sounds kind of like somebody is talking, kind of like you're listening to AM radio and like another station is bleeding over or something like that. But then as the song goes through, the talking gets louder, and you can hear that it's a news broadcast talking about a lot of political issues in the day. And by the end of the song, the news is the loudest, and Simon and Garfunkel are the quietest. And it kind of goes from Simon and Garfunkel being really loud, singing Silent Night, to the news being loud at the end, kind of showing how people ignore um, like good things too wrapped up in the news and all this trouble that we don't have peace on earth because we're too caught
Yeah.
up in the news. Uh, yeah, Garage Geek. He says it's very effective, but it even says like I've seen vinyl copies of it, and like it says on the back like whoever was doing the liner notes was really impressed with the song, and he said I don't want to ruin anything for you, but it like left me speechless or something like that.
Really?
But really amazing album. I need to buy it, but I don't have it for now. Parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme.
Yep, and you pretty much said everything I was gonna say because that's my number. That's my number 2. But yeah, pretty much what Garrett was saying. Yeah, this is their first really great. Their really great album. Like, there's so many great songs on here, like Scarborough Fair. I really enjoyed Patterns. I like the cadence of that song. I think that's really cool. And actually, no, not Patterns. Yeah, and another thing I liked about Patterns, I liked how the percussion and the like, I think it was a bongo, but the bongos and the bass were just locked in. Is like how they sound together. And of course, Cloudy, Homeward Bound, the 59th Street Bridge songs, Dangling Conversation. Dangling Conversation has like the orchestration on that one, and even the Bob Dylan parody is also very fun. I like that this sounds like there's a distorted guitar on it, and I've always liked that one. And yeah, finishes out with 7 o'clock news / Silent Night. But I really liked how Garrett put it, because I didn't get that song when I first heard it, but after Garrett described it, I was like, oh, that's actually kind of cool. I kind of like that now. So I think I have a much better appreciation for it now. But yeah, it's another fantastic one, but there can be only one number 1, but we'll get to that later. But yeah, that's my number 2.
I'm just reading it now. And then there is 7 o'clock news / Silent Night. I will not tell you in advance what goes on here. My first hearing of it brought chills to my spine and tears to my eyes. It is one of the most effective statements about the world today, and then that I ever heard. So yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
My number 2, Wednesday morning, 3 a.m.
Wow.
This is my hot take for today.
Yeah.
I'm guessing we all have the same number 1.
Yeah, we do have all the same number 1, and good.
Because how could it be anything else?
Yeah,
Well,
pretty much.
I was really close to putting this at number 1, but
That'd be
then
something.
I listened to Bridge Over the Troubled Water again. I'm like, yeah, that's number 1. You Could Tell the World, such a great opener. This is my second album I ever bought. So, well, not this copy specifically,
Right.
but there's another copy I own. Last night I had The Stranger's Dream. Maybe a cover, but it's so effective. Like having a dream of putting an end to war. It's just the way Simon and Paul I don't know why I said Paul. Simon and Art Garfunkel just like blend their vocals. It's just so nice. Bleecker Street, such a beautiful song.
I forgot about Bleecker Street. That was a good one.
There's actually a street called Bleecker Street in Manhattan. So every time I go to that street, I think about this song and this album.
And Doctor Strange.
Sparrow, I love this song. It's like, ooh, loving little sparrow, with Simon like eyes are lonely. I like it. This also reminds me of Bob Dylan, Sparrow. It's like something that like Bob Dylan would cover in his early stage.
Mm-hmm.
Benedictus, I think that's how you say it.
Benedictus.
Yeah, but it's such a nice, calm song. Just them like, it's the first time I ever heard this. I'm like, wow, so lovely. And then I heard the Sounds of Silence, and I'm like, wow, this is really good too. Again, I just love the original version just much better. It's just every time I listen to it, it's just wow, this is so good. And when I listen to the over dramatic electric version, I'm like, this is good, but not amazing. Flip over to side 2, you get He Was My Brother, and in Paul Simon's solo album, he he re-records it on his own, and he does it better on he better it's he not he takes a really great song and he makes it into a perfect song. But this version is really good too. Peggy O, I really like, and then go tell it on the mountain. I love it so much. This is the one song that made me like question, like, is this gonna be my favorite Simon and Garfunkel album? Is this gonna be the song that pushes it over the edge? And then, like, yeah, never mind. When I heard the Bridge Over Troubled Water again, The Sun Is Burning, really nice song. I agree with Garrett. The times they are changing. It's a really great cover, and it ends on such a great note with the title track. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
First time I ever heard it was when I bought it. I'm like, you know what? I want to get the album that had Sounds of Silence, the acoustic version, and this album always had a soft spot to me too, because it's one of the first albums I ever bought with my own money. So yeah, that's my number 2 spot.
Is it me, or is the title take up like the whole album there? There's something really weird about it.
Yeah,
It's like
it takes up half of it.
It's like, what's going on? Who came up with this idea? Like, usually you have the picture, and then the title's like in the picture. You know what I mean?
Plus, they're in the subway station,
and someone's like,
"Yeah, the picture below is really cool.
We're gonna make
this
small whole album."
I know, Jason. You said the album covers aren't that imaginative, but I really like this one with the Paul Simon with the acoustic guitar, and them by the subway station.
Yeah.
That I think the way I look at it, it's like kind of personal to them, because they were from New York, and
yeah,
you know, this is like them, like, hey, this is where we are. We're from New York. You know, here's the subway station. This is where we're from, Queens, New York. Here's us, and that's I like when bands do that. Like one of my favorite album covers is the Poor Boys, because they just look like a couple of guys just having a good time playing instruments. You know,
right?
Yeah.
That's just me though.
I don't know. I just now noticed that when I saw that, and I was like, what is going on?
It's weird. I'm glad you mentioned that. It is weird.
Yeah, I kind of wish it was bigger.
They're like, should we make the font smaller? No. When they're making it, no, make it big.
Let's make
Like Art Garfunkel was like, we should make the font just a
Are
little.
you sure?
Paul Simon, shut up, Art.
Yeah, sure. Shut up. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah. Paul Simon's like, hey, what do you think about the new album cover? He's like, don't you think we should show a little more of the photo? No, I think this is good. I think this is our album cover.
And then, of course, we're going to see that again on Bridge Over Troubled Water. But
It's going to catch on. Yeah. My number 2, same as Briar, Parsley, Sage, Rosemary, and Thyme. And I was listening to these albums in chronological order from Wednesday morning 3 a.m. to Bridge Over Troubled Waters. When I got to this album, and I'm thinking, like, the very first song is Scarborough Fair. And, like, man, when you listen to that song, it just blows me away. The vocals. It's just like, I was thinking, like, man, I've heard this song, of course, many times before. I love the song. And it's like, if I never heard of Simon Garfunkel and I was listening to these albums for the first time in my life, you know, I was like, once I got to Scarborough Fair, I'd be like, it's done. They're the greatest duo of all time. I mean, this, to me, like, this is even before I get to Bridge Over Troubled Waters. And I'm like, this is like the greatest duo ever. Like this, like they're showing off, like listen how good we are. We're going to sing 2 different parts at the same time, and it totally meshes together and it harmonizes. And it's just like, we're just the greatest. And I'm like, yes, you are, when I listen to that song. But yeah, I absolutely love how that opens that. And man, I love this album. And I actually didn't have it that high when I first, I know I've heard this album before, but it's been maybe a couple of years since I really listened to it. And so I don't remember much about it. And I was re-listening to it, and I'm like, how do I not have this like really high on my list of 100 favorite albums? I don't even have it on my list. And I'm like kicking myself, like, this should be on my 100 favorite albums list. I don't know why I didn't put it on there, and why I don't know. I listened to, maybe because I just haven't listened to it enough. And the more times you listen, the more you like go, hey, this is really good. So like, this is maybe my second time really listening to the album. And I was just like blown away by like I knew what my number 1 was going to be. But then I listened to this and I was like, okay, this is definitely my number 2. And it's almost my number 1. Like it's almost goes up. It's almost competing with number 1 for me, but not quite there, but darn good. I mean, Homeward Bound, yeah, one of my favorite Simon Garfunkel songs. Love the whole idea of kind of reminiscing of going home, missing going home, which I don't know if that's part of him being in England and missing going home or something, but or wherever he came up with that idea. I'm sure, or maybe just traveling. And musicians are always on the road. But yeah, great song there. And like I said, 59th Street Bridge song, really great song. Always call it Feeling Groovy. I never knew it was like 59th. Like when you're looking up songs, you always look up Feeling Groovy and it'd be like, there's no song called that. And I'm like, yes, so there is. There's a Simon Garfunkel song called Feeling Groovy. And then you find out it's kind of like Bob O'Reilly. Like
Yeah.
I'm like always like,
Yeah, where's the Teenage Wasteland song?
I'm always searching
Yeah.
Teenage Wasteland. It's like, and Google's like, there's no Teenage Wasteland. I'm like, yes, there is. There's a Teenage. And then you're like, oh, Bob O'Reilly. Okay. But yeah, so it was catching me off guard. But for Emily, wherever I may found her, actually, the first time I heard that song was on a Greatest Hits album that my parents had when I was growing up. And for some reason, this like Greatest Hits album had a lot of live versions of songs. I don't know what I can't remember if they. I don't know if they have different kinds of best ofs, but
I think I know which one you're talking about.
Okay.
I think that's the original Greatest Hits that was released back in like the early 70s. And
yeah,
that does have a lot of live songs, and unfortunately it steps on the piano intro to Bridge Over Troubled Water because of it.
yeah. The only thing I don't like is that there's clapping at the end, and it kind of is like okay, like it like overpowers your ears because all of a sudden you hear loud clapping. You're like, oh my god, like, there's all this clapping now. like I didn't need that, but on that version, there's a live version for Emily Wherever I Found Her. And I actually really love that version because it's just Art Garfunkel singing by himself. And I just love his voice. I mean, Simon has a decent voice, but to me, Garfunkel is like my favorite out of the two as far as like vocals. He has this great high tenor voice. Of course, we'll get to it on the next album, especially, but him just singing by himself is like so amazing. And I love that version of For Emily Wherever I Might Found Her with him singing because, man, he really belts it out. This version's good, but I don't like as much as the live version, I would say, because this one Simon also sings along with them, and I'm thinking, I listen to it, I'm like, Simon, get out of the way. Like, I just want to listen to Garfunkel. Anyways, but yeah, really great song. Then you said Cloudy. I wasn't familiar with that one, and I really like that song. I was like, man, this is a really good song. I don't know why I don't know this one. And you guys mentioned like the Dangling Conversation I really liked. And Flowers Never Been with the Rainfall I really enjoyed, and those are ones I like. I didn't. It's like every album has big hits, and it's like the non-big hits that really elevate it, and that's what elevates this to number 2 for me. Is just even those non-big hits are just so good to me. Anyway, so yeah, so this is to me one of the greatest albums. Parsley, Sage, Rosemary, Thyme. It should be higher on my list of greatest albums. And next time I redo my list, this will definitely be in there.
Sorry for the interruption, by the way. Got a notification.
Okay. All right. My number 2. This absolutely incredible album right here. Bookends. And I'm going to go into deeper discussion about...
Yes, before you do that, I predicted your list.
Yes, you did. This
I had a feeling you were going to do that. Like, the album got better as he went on.
This copy was given to me by somebody. I need to get a new copy because... A, like, look, the whole spine is breaking here. There's tape on the bottom, so I wrote their name on the front. There's all this ring wear. But B, it's also a reissue from the 70s, so I want to get the first pressing in a better condition. But it works for now. I'm going to listen to this later tonight in reverse order, like Nick said, side 2 and then side 1. But, as it were, side 1 is the Bookends Suite, which talks about basically just the cycle of life. And what's really cool, because the album is called Bookends, and the first side is bookended by the Bookends theme. So I think that's really cool. You got this cool Bookends theme. It goes like do 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 do, and then like it just comes like and like Save the Life of My Child is a very disturbing song because I think it's about a suicidal child at the beginning who's going through, and like his mother is worried about him. Like the police officer is trying to get him And there's all these sound effects, like this lady, this like high opera singer, singing this really high note, and then they start like randomly playing the sound of silence in there at the like somewhere in the middle with a bunch of other stuff. Kind of them trying to do psychedelic in the middle, but cool song. And then we get to America, which kind of represents if you're from another country moving to America and wanting to discover America, or if you're from America, I guess, like just going out and discovering America now that you're old enough to. Um, and it's about we'll just say this song is about Paul Simon. That Paul Simon meeting this girl Kathy on a bus and laughing, pretending that the guy sitting in front of them is really a spy, and that like his bow tie is a camera or something like that. And then realizing that he come to find America, but America was all around him there the whole time. And then we have Overs, which this song is amazing. Starts out with just Paul and his guitar, but then like Art Garfunkel kind of creeps up and behind us, like sounding like a ghost or something. It's really cool. Kind of showing you're getting near the end of your life. And then we get to the voices of old people, and I'm going to read this straight from the album. Art Garfunkel recorded old people in various locations in New York and Los Angeles over a period of several months. These voices were taken from those tapes. We wish to thank the United Home for Aged Heroes and the California Home for the Aged at Residia for their cooperation.
Go figure.
So this,
Garfunkel will be the one who would do it.
so this is basically Art Garfunkel going and recording, like just having conversations with older people to kind of get some advice from them to put on their record for younger viewers who aren't quite as old as them. But that goes well into Old Friends, which this song is amazing as well. What's really weird is the line that says, how terribly strange to be 70. And Simon and Garfunkel are both older than 70 now. So that's interesting now that listening to them so young saying how terribly strange to be 70, and now they're older than 70. But then it goes into the Bookends theme reprise, or reprise, however you say it, completing the cycle of life, basically, kind of the Bookends theme acting as birth and death. And then you flip it over to side 2, and you got all these great singles on there. Fakin' It is really great. Paul Simon said that he was trying to make a psychedelic song, but he didn't know what he was doing, so he was just faking it. So that kind of goes with the title. Punky's Dilemma. I love this line, I wish I was a Kellogg's cornflake. I don't know why, but it's just kind of a carefree little song there. And then, of course, you get Mrs. Robinson. That's amazing. I like the guitar in that one. And funny enough, Simon and Garfunkel really liked the Beatles, and they wanted to make a reference to the Beatles. So they made the line "Cuckoo Cachoo, Mrs. Robinson," but they didn't read the lyrics to "I Am the Walrus" because it's actually "Goo Goo Cachoob." But they said "Cuckoo Cachoo" instead. They thought that's what they were saying. But this song was written specifically for the movie The Graduate, Dustin Hoffman movie. Then you get to A Hazy Shade of Winter, which is amazing as well. I love the guitar riff on that one. And then it ends with At the Zoo, which is a great song, but is kind of a little underwhelming as an album closer. But we will see if that gets fixed by playing the album backwards.
Who knows? Maybe you might consider it to be. Maybe you might be like, hey, maybe this is gonna be this new side 1. Maybe this is gonna be the new side 2. Who knows?
We will see.
All right.
Yeah, wasn't Mrs. Robinson first called Mrs. Roosevelt?
It was, and then they changed the title
And
for the movie.
Changed it just for the movie, I guess.
All right. Okay. Well,
What's number 1, Dryer?
Well, I think we all
It's
know what it is.
the Paul
So we might-
Simon songbook.
I forget what's left.
Yeah. So I think all of us should just bring it out.
Mardi
now,
Gras.
but yeah, Bridge Over Troubled Water
Summer
is
in Paradise.
Come on, Garrett, get your troubled water out.
I'm just gonna go
Or
ahead and put it
Satanic
there.
There you
Majesty.
go. It's kind of
No.
cool. It's kind of cool. We have the vinyl guys on top and the CDs on the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, there was for me there was no question about no doubt about it. This had to be my number one. I mean, it starts out with the title track, which is one of the most beautiful songs ever written. One of Art Garfunkel's shining moments. Like probably his best vocal performance ever. Um, by this point, they're incorporating much more genres. They have R&B, they have gospel, some jazz, and even a little bit of world music, which is kind of foreshadowing what Paul will do later in his solo career. But yeah, I already mentioned title track, but of course the other timeless classic on here is of course The Boxer, which I mean one of Paul's, like, lyrically that's one of Paul's best ever, because you can take it literally. It could be literally just about a boxer, but it can also be interpreted for you, like anybody having troubles through life, and all the hardships are just coming at you, but yet you just keep plowing through no matter how many punches you're being taken. And I just love the whole na na na. You hear that big drum noise, which really sums up the feeling of somebody getting punched, but yet they still keep pressure on. So yeah, I absolutely love that song. But all the other songs are also spectacular. Like you have the El Condor Passe, if I could, which is another great one. Then Cecilia, another really spectacular song. Keep the Customer Satisfied, and then you have So Long Frank Lloyd Wright, which is dedicated to the actual Frank Lloyd Wright, but it is also, when I looked it up, it was kind of also has another meaning to it, because it's kind of symbolizing Paul and Art's kind of how they're kind of drifting apart, and this album kind of has that feel that, yeah, this is probably going to be the last one. Then you have Baby Driver, Why Don't You Write Me. It does have the sin of including a random live track near the end, which usually I'm not a fan of. But it's fine. It's this Bye Bye Love, the Everly Brothers. Yeah, but it's fine. It's okay. I don't mind it. And finished out with song for the Asking, which is a pretty nice closer. But yeah, even though they didn't release that many albums, I think this was definitely a great one to go out on. So yeah, that's my number one.
This is my number one. What a surprise!
Yeah,
It was, like I said, I was considering being Wednesday morning 3 a.m. But Bridge Over Troubled Water, one of their best songs they ever made. I'm not usually a big Art Garfunkel fan, but he absolutely carries this track with his beautiful voice. Well, I wouldn't say like most tracks I'm not a crazy fan, but this one he really nails it on his vocals. That's kind of how I feel with the Who. Like Roger Daltrey, for me, is good, but like on the Who Are You album, he's really good. But that's how I feel about this album. Like Garfunkel isn't, in my opinion, like the best, but he still isn't my favorite on this album. I still prefer Paul Simon's vocals, but he really nails it on this song. Al Cordo Pasa, if I could, absolutely amazing. Paul Simon, this is one of his, like, I love his voice in general, but this like Art Garfunkel nails it on the first one, and then he nails it on the second one. Like, really, both of them showing their vocal talents. Plus, like the second, third album, like the Wrecking Crew plays a good role in it, but like Bookends and especially this album, they like at this point, like they nail the sound at this point with them. Cecilia, absolutely love it. Iconic for a reason. Keep the Customer Satisfied. My favorite Simon & Garfunkel song. Absolute masterpiece. I love it so much. And this is like, yeah, this shows how great their vocal harmonies are, and it shows how great they worked with the Wrecking Crew. Like how it just works so well. First, it kind of starts with the acoustic, and then like it just builds up, and it's just like it just ends, and then it's so good that the next song to me is just a bore. Like I feel like I don't know. I'm not a big fan of So Long Frank Lloyd Wright. Lyrically, it's great, but I'm not a big fan of this one. This to me, this is like borderline filler to me. Like I think this is more filler than the live track that they put on the album. The Boxer, everyone knows the Boxer. It's really good. Very iconic for a reason. Baby Driver, another great song on this. I love it so much. What's my number? Love it so much. The Only Living Boy in New York. This song I think is about Art Garfunkel. I think he even mentions like Tom. I think. Let me look at the lyrics. I think Tom is mentioned in the song. Check.
Is there Tom and Jerry or what?
Yeah, that there were actually a duo called Tom and Jerry.
Yeah.
And, yeah. Never mind. Yeah, Tom, get your plane right on time. Yeah, this is about Garfunkel and really, really beautiful song. Paul Simon with his amazing voice. Garfunkel doing a great. He has a great voice on this song too. This song is really great. It's just so nice and peaceful.
Yeah.
And then the next song comes on. Why Don't You Write Me? And it's goofy. I'm. It's like I'm in the high, hang from the highest tree. Why don't you wrap me? It's like, and then the next song, Bye Bye Love. Even though it's a live track on a album, it works so well on this. Rolling Stones, you should have taken notes on this. Like,
Yeah.
what if they were planning on doing it, if they were planning on doing what they did in the U.S. albums in the early '60s, like they should have took notes on this because it's actually really good.
Oh no, the only one of their live songs that worked on the album was whatever that is on Out of Our Heads, that Inside
Yeah,
One.
I
I forget the name of it, but
It's all right, I think.
yeah, it's all right. It's all right. It's
Song
all
for the
right.
Asking just ends it so beautifully, and overall, this is just to me, this is like a near perfect album. If So Long Frank Lloyd Wright wasn't on this, I'd probably say this is like a perfect album. But yeah, that's my number one.
Yeah. Can we talk about this picture? What is going on? In this picture?
Yeah, it's all
Yeah,
blurry. It's all blurry.
Cover Simon's face. It would look like he has like a mustache or a beard.
And
They're just-
I'm not
were
even
they
a fan of
walking down
Paul's
the street?
hairstyle at this point. This looks kind of goofy.
It's like they were walking down the street and they took a picture and like, okay, that's the cover. 'Cause
Am
I'm
I
like,
the only one who likes this cover?
I'm like,
I
you're
love
right
this
in
cover.
front of Garfunkel. You can't see Garfunkel.
Here,
That's a
Jason,
weird-
put your thumb over Paul Simon's face, but not his hair.
Yeah, it
his
looks.
mustache.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like Garfunkel has a mustache.
Yeah, it's
And a very large
I went in
chin.
the YouTube comment section mentioned that, and I'm like, wow, that's kind of funny.
Where is it?
Mustache. You're right.
It's hard to do it on the record version.
I don't know. It's like this is the greatest, one of the greatest. This is my favorite album. It's one of the greatest albums. I'm like, could you do something a little more with the cover? I don't know. That's just me. But yeah, it's like I said. To me, 4 songs that I heard on their greatest hits album, Bridge Over Troubled Water. I believe won the Grammy for best song for 1970. I think this came out.
This album won like 6 Grammys.
I don't know. Did it win album of the year? I can't remember.
It was album of the year.
Okay, so it's like album of the year. Yeah, we said they ended on album of the year, song of the year kind of thing. It's like that's amazing. I mean, El Condor Pasa, if I could, is another one I've seen on the Greatest Hits album, so I know that's one that's pretty popular. Cecilia, another one. I love the rhythm section there, the drumming and everything, whatever you want to call that, and just a fun song, kind of a funny song when you listen to the lyrics. So he gets out of bed and then someone took his place or something, and like, what's going on in this relationship? And then The Boxers, the other one that's absolutely one of their best, one of my favorites. Like I said, lyrically, it just tells a story really, which I like kind of listening in and talking about this boxer, and every glove is a reminder, I think it says, or something like that. I'm leaving, but the fire still remains. I mean, so great.
Yeah.
So you got these 4 huge hits, and like I said, they all got huge hits, but what makes it so great is some of these other songs I'm not familiar with, that when I listen to it, I'm like, Keep the Customer Satisfied. I love that song. And like, I've never heard that song until I listened to this album, because it's not on the radio as far as I remember. But I'm like, this is such a good song. Like, it's so catchy. This is one I listen to all the time now. After I've, listened to this album. I like So Long Frank Lloyd Wright. That's a pretty decent song. Maybe, I don't know if that's a hot take or not, but it's one that, again, not real familiar with until you listen to the album. The Only Living Boy in New York, absolutely love that. Another one that's like one of their great songs. That's not a hit song that you hear on the radio, but man, it's so beautiful. Love his guitar playing, like you said, and Simon's just so great on there. Another real fun song to listen to. Yeah, so to me, it's like those lesser songs or those not big hit songs are just as good as some of the big hits. And that's why when I listen to this album, I'm just like, yeah, like you said, it's like almost a perfect album where I'm listening to every song and I'm going, this is a good song. This is a good song. This is a good song. Like, yeah, it's up there. It's in my, I think, top 15 like favorite albums of all time. So whenever I get to that I'm at number 32 right now on my top 100 favorite albums. So this is an album that's going to be real high up on my list. Like I said, yeah. What can you say? One of the greatest albums of all time.
Yes, this is one of the greatest albums of all time, and for that, I take my glasses off. I think it's number 24 on my list of greatest
35.
albums of all time.
Okay.
Which I still need to figure out what I'm going to do with that series. I might just make one video where I talk about all of them, because I got shut down
Right.
by the YouTube police whenever I was playing Sticks. But anyways, wow, what a good album. First off, the title track. In my opinion, the greatest song of all time.
Yeah.
Well, that's not a Beatles song.
I know that's coming from somebody who loves the Beatles. Like
Yeah.
this is better than Strawberry Fields. It's better than Good Vibrations. Better than
Okay.
God Only Knows, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Oh, wow.
And I'll tell you why. It's because of the first time I listened to this song. A friend, like we were listening to Simon and Garfunkel. A friend says, "Hey, you ever listen to Bridge Over Troubled Water?" And I said, "No." So I'll listen to that later. So I listened to the song, and this like incredible piano playing just starts, and I'm like, "Wow, that's good piano playing." And then like I listened to these lyrics. I'm just gonna read the first verse here. When you're weary, feeling small, when tears are in your eyes, I will dry them all. I'm on your side when times get rough, and friends just can't be found. Like a bridge over troubled water, I will lay me down. So basically, this is like a love song, but it's not in the way you think it would be. It's not like sappy romantic love. It's unconditional love, like love as an action as opposed to a feeling. And when I think about that, like that's the kind of love I want to have, you know, if I ever get married one day. Especially like the last verse, man. Like what's the line? If you never need a friend, I'm sailing right behind. Like, just the lyrics to this song are absolutely amazing. And pair that with Art Garfunkel's tenor voice, and then you got the Wrecking Crew behind that, and like one of the greatest drum sounds ever with that snare sound. And the strings at the end, I mean, like, there's so much that's already been said about this song, but like, I could go on for another 20 minutes about this song. So I'm just going to leave it there, but it has a very personal meaning to me.
Okay.
Anyway, then we get to El Condor Pasa, which is a kind of a world music kind of sound. And what's really funny is in Spanish class, there was a question on my test about who used like a certain kind of pipes in their song El Condor Pasa. And I'm like, I didn't even have to study. I know that. That's Simon and Garfunkel. And like when we were learning about that, like it was a paragraph, and like the professor was like, Simon and Garfunkel incorporated world music into like in some traditional Spanish instruments. And I'm like, oh, that must be El Condor Pasa. And like they looked at me like, how do you know that? I haven't even said that yet. I'm just like, it's because I like Simon and Garfunkel. Anyway, you get to another one of their really big hits, Cecilia. I will say I like the single version better because it's sped up a little bit.
Okay.
It's in a higher key, but the album version is really great too. It's just in a lower key. Keep the Customer Satisfied is one of my favorite songs on this album. I love the horn section.
Yeah.
And if you have not picked this up and listened to it on vinyl, you do not know the full power of the horn section that this song has. It will blow you away.
Is he talking to me and you, Briar?
Absolutely amazing.
What?
Is he talking to me and you, Briar?
Yes.
Maybe I probably won't
Yes,
like
yes.
it.
Get the vinyl because the horn section on Keep the Customer Satisfied is worth the price of entry alone. And not to mention the title track, but then you got So Long Frank Lloyd Wright, another just fantastic song. The Boxer, my second favorite song on this album. You guys have already said just so much about The Boxer. I can't really say much more about it
Right.
other than it tells a
Yeah.
good story, and I love the la la la. That same kind of. I believe it was played by Hal Blaine,
Yeah, it was him.
who also played on Good Vibrations.
That's right.
Hal Blaine is a great drummer, very
mean,
Yes.
underrated.
Yeah, very
Like one of
prolific.
the things I really like about Hal Blaine is like just the sounds he uses on the drums, because somehow he figures out how to make the drums sound different, which I don't know how. I'm not a drummer, but somehow he makes the drums sound different. Then we get Baby Driver, which is kind of like some 1950s rock and roll sound. The Only Living Boy in New York, which is, as Nick said, kind of talking about how Simon and Garfunkel were drifting off.
Yeah.
Why Don't You Write Me is probably my least favorite song on the album. Still really good, but it's just kind of like na 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 na. Why don't you write me? It's good, but it's just not as good. Then you get to the live version of Bye Bye Love. It's an Everly Brothers song. I don't know why they threw this on. It's not like they couldn't have just written another song, but I actually like it.
It's fine.
Ray Charles does a pretty good version of Bye Bye Love as well, if you want to check out somebody else who does it other than the Everly Brothers. And then it closes with Song for the Asking, which is just a quiet little way to end the album and a pretty good way to end your career.
Yeah.
And move on to going down to the schoolyard with Julio.
Yeah, one of the two would have a big career after this.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I've been listening to Paul Simon's solo albums, and some of them are really good. The Still Crazy After All These Years is amazing. I really like that album.
Have you ever listened to Garfunkel? I've never listened to any of his solo stuff.
I haven't.
Yeah,
No.
I think he made some solo. I don't know much about his solo.
I know he had an acting career.
Yeah.
I just know he has like one album that's called like Haircut or something like that.
Oh, really?
Something about like shave or haircut or something like that.
And he had such
They
a great
both, they both have self-titled albums, and yeah.
He just needed Simon's songwriting, maybe? I don't know what.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. So, oddly enough, my ranking is the exact same as Paul Simon's. Paul Simon was once asked how he would rate the Simon and Garfunkel albums, and he said that each one is better than the last.
Yeah.
Yes.
With that.
Yes, Garage Geek, that's the one.
Yeah, I was this close to having that same one, but at the last second, well, I switched.
That's all right, because I'm starting to think that maybe Parsley Sage, Rosemary, and Thyme is my second favorite as well. But I need to buy it and hear what it sounds like on vinyl, and then I can decide.
I might listen to Paul Simon's first album, and like his first album without Garfunkel, that's in the 70s, and I might do Garfunkel, and I might do a track versus track video.
Yeah, definitely listen to that self-titled one, and definitely listen to "Still Crazy After All These Years" because that one's really great.
Yeah.
Anyway, I guess that concludes the Simon and Garfunkel ratings. Thank you guys for joining on the stream. We got a good hour and a half on a 5-album discography. So
next week we're doing Billy Joel's discography ranking.
Yes. Oh, I'm not going to be able to use that in the thumbnail because the StreamYard logo is. Oh wait, I might be able to use that picture, but
how many does he have?
He has 13 albums.
Okay,
so that's kind of a medium size.
We're
going to be doing from Cold Spring Harbor through the River of Dreams.
Yeah, we're not doing that one other album he made.
No, because he didn't even play on it. He just wrote some classical piano concertos and had a famous musician play them.
You guys ever do like a Bob Dylan?
Probably not for
we after doing the Beach Boys, we said if we're going to do another artist that has a lot of albums, we're going to cut them off at a certain point.
I'm guessing quite a lot of albums.
She
Yeah.
does. So anyway, for those who are still watching, we may continue this conversation backstage. But for those who are watching, tune in next week for the studio albums of Billy Joel. And thank you for watching.
I'm heading out. Gotta go to sleep.
See you
Yeah.
next.
Adios.
See you.
See ya.